Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon and welcome, welcome, welcome. It is Tuesday. It is 4 p.m. ET, and we are so thrilled that you have found us here on Crime Time on A Mighty Blaze. I'm your host, Hank Phillippi Ryan, the author of 16 USA Today bestselling novels. The current one is All This Could Be Yours, which just went into a second printing and was an instant USA Today bestseller. I'm so happy about that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. But today we're not going to talk about my book. We're going to talk about The Mad Wife by Meagan Church. Meagan Church is here with us today. It was not only an instant New York Times bestseller, but 5 weeks and going strong on the New York Times bestseller list, which you all are smart people. You know that this does not happen generally. And that is because this book is extraordinary. It's gorgeously written. It's unbelievably heartbreaking. It's incredibly poignant. It's a masterclass in voice. I don't think I've ever read a book this suspenseful. I was just reading it, like clutching my heart as the pages went by. So congratulations to Meagan Church for this absolutely amazing book and the hilarious and touching cover. Meagan, when you saw this cover for the first time, what did you say?
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. And Hank, if you want me to start crying to start off this interview, then just keep on talking. Thank you so much. Everything you said just really means a lot. But yes, this cover is just extraordinary. And they actually Sourcebook sent me 6 concepts. And this was one, but it was a little bit different where it was cropped like right at her eyes. And so we decided to zoom out and use that black bar. And the minute I saw it, I knew that was it. That was Lulu. And I never get tired of looking at this cover.
And I have seen so many pictures of you and everyone on Instagram with your eyes blocked out. Are those special glasses? How do you do that?
They are glasses. I would not say they're special because they are $7 novelty glasses that came from Amazon that I thought about making some with just some cheap sunglasses for book events. And I found that these are already available. And so, yeah, they are such fun photo ops to do with just these silly little glasses to recreate the cover.
And it's interesting that because recreating the cover is silly, but this is such a powerful cover because she is just erased and her eyes are erased. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. Congratulations on your success. Let me ask you again about that though. So there's the moment that you found that you made the New York Times list, and then again and again and again and again. How does that feel? What did someone, your agent or your editor call you like the 5th time?
Yes. Well, I think the word I keep coming back to is surreal. Every week that I've gotten the call has just felt surreal. With the first week, the USA Today list comes out in the morning. And so I was hitting refresh as early as I could for that list. And once I saw the placement, I thought, wow, is the Times actually possible? And it was about 3:30 in the afternoon that my editor texted me, which she doesn't do. She does not typically text me. I think it was the first time she'd ever texted me. And she said, hey, can we get on a FaceTime? And I was like, oh, something is going on. This is big. And she told me the news. We both cried. We celebrated. And then I made a lot of phone calls to tell everybody else about it. But now it is typically my publicist at Sourcebooks who calls me on Wednesdays. We really enjoy these Wednesday chats that we have. We hope they keep going. But if not, it's still just an honor and a surreal experience to have 5 weeks on the New York Times list.
I mean, people just don't get to say that. I mean, I know you know. What's your editor's name so we can give her some applause or him?
Yeah, MJ Johnston at Sourcebooks.
Fantastic. Well, congratulations to you both and to all of you. And to all of you who are coming today. Look, Emily is here and Renee is here. Christina Goodwin Jurgens is here. Linda Olds-Burrell is here. I bet you'll see her on book tour. Robin Stull and Randy Gravitz is here. So lovely to see you all. Kathy Lanigan and Kim Rutter. Look, I'm turning this scrolling, and Laura and Sue Street and Melanie Borelli. Everybody is here. Anissa is here, who I know that you've seen on book tour as well. She is such a rock star. If you are new to A Mighty Blaze, welcome. As I said, welcome, welcome, welcome. A Mighty Blaze was started 5 years ago, more than that, at the beginning of the pandemic by the wonderful powerhouse duo of Caroline Levitt and Jenna Blum to keep us all discovering new books, reading new books, keeping the reading and writing community together. And maybe you will discover every week your new favorite writer, and it could be Meagan Church, who is here today talking about The Mad Wife. Let me quickly say to you two more things before we get to Meagan. One, you can win a copy of The Mad Wife by just putting in a comment or a question or general adulation and admiration, like Melanie says, I can't wait to read this. Robin says, wowza, 5 weeks on the list. And that means you are entered to win your very own copy of this. If you don't win, you know what to do. Run, 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 click, 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 and get a copy of this. But not right now. Wait until the interview is over because you'll want it even more. So we'll spin the wheel of fun at the end of the show and one of you will win. Meanwhile, Meagan Church is the author of the instant New York Times and USA Today best-selling novel, The Mad Wife, as well as The Girls We Sent Away and The Last Carolina Girl. Her emotionally charged, empathy-driven fiction explores women's inner lives and the silencing of their stories. She is an adjunct faculty member at Drexel University's MFA program, a fellow Drexel MFA, and lives in the Charlotte area with her family. Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is quite a treat for me to talk with you. As you can see from my gushing, I am such a fan. If somebody possibly has not heard this book, which I can't even imagine, Jennifer says, I loved this with me, sister. Tell us a little bit about this story.
Yeah, so The Mad Wife is set in 1950s suburbia, and it follows Lulu Mayfield, who should be living the ideal post-war American dream life. I mean, you know, she keeps her husband happy, her household running, and her gelatin salads the talk of the neighborhood. But after the birth of her second child, she begins to unravel. And then when a new neighbor moves in across the street, Bitsy Betzer, who has this constant smile on her face, Lulu begins to think that this woman's a little suspicious, that the perfection she portrays might not really be the full story. And so Lulu begins to become obsessed with trying to figure out if there is a secret lurking behind that smile. But the more she digs, the more she comes face to face with a reality that is almost too much to bear. And the more those around her begin to question her grip on reality. And so all of this is set in the 1950s in an era when hysteria was a blanket diagnosis that, you know, it could explain away just boredom, right? Or it could cover up things like conditions such as depression or anxiety, postpartum depression and psychosis, even things like MS or rheumatoid arthritis, or all of these other things that women actually needed to be treated for. But instead, they were silenced by this catch-all diagnosis. So it is historical fiction, but it has elements of psychological suspense to it as well. And the inspiration was Sylvia Plath's The Bell Jar, and you can also see nods to the hours in it as well. And basically, it's a story that will make you question the lives that we build and the lies that we live.
Even from your description of the book, since I've read it and I know what everything you say means, even that description of the book is tantalizingly genius because it's really cleverly both that elevator pitch and the book. I mean, it's all true, but it's different than you think. And that's one of the things that is so marvelous about this novel. And we'll talk about everything that you pointed up in a minute. But the main character, Lulu, who are so deeply inside her mind and self. It is a real masterclass in voice, this book. Can you talk a little bit about where she came from and how that evolved?
Yeah, absolutely. With all of my novels, this is my third. They are all character driven, very much focused on the main character. And this was my second time using the first person perspective. But with this story, with Lulu, it was so much more immersive than with my first two, where there truly were moments when it felt as if I was looking through her eyes and that I was really transcribing what she was showing me. And it was the research that came first that really put me into her mindset. It all started with this black and white video I happened upon on YouTube that was of this woman in the 1960s sitting in her psychiatrist's office. And this is a psychiatric training video, is what it was labeled. And she's sitting there looking almost like Laura Petrie from the Dick Van Dyke Show. She has her legs crossed. She has a cigarette lit. She starts talking about how she doesn't like it when it gets quiet. She mentions some childhood trauma. She talks about how she wants to divorce her husband. And then she brings it all back to herself and she says it's her fault and she simply needs to get her nerves in order. And I watched this. It's something like a 6-7 minute clip. And I watched this over and over again and was just imagining what is this woman's real story? What does she feel she has to say? What does she think she can't say? And her diagnosis was hysteria. And so the more I watched the video, the more I dug into that history, the more this Lulu character started talking to me. And as I said, just really immersed me in her story in a way that certainly comes through on the page then.
It definitely does. I'm fascinated about why you were watching that video in the first place.
That's a good question. And I wish I could answer that. I do not remember. Yeah, I mean, you know how the algorithm works and, you know, it'll show you random things. And I do not remember what I was watching before that this little thing popped up in the side and, whoa, what's that? And I click on that and here we go. And a book comes out of it.
And a book comes out of it. It sure did. The 5-week New York Times bestseller, The Mad Wife, out of a click on social media. That's just great. Don't go to social media, though. It's fine. Talking about hysteria. I mean, talking about Lulu and hysteria. When you saw the video and you figured or realized or were told that she was diagnosed with hysteria. Mm-hmm. Now that seems like such an archaic word. You know, we just wouldn't say that. When you started doing research into hysteria, what did you find?
Yeah, so hysteria goes back to the ancient Greeks and Egyptians, where they actually called it the wandering womb, because they believed that if a woman was out of sorts, it was because her uterus was migrating throughout her body. So the root word for hysteria is uterus, just like hysterectomy and hysteria, right? So, of course, after autopsies came on the scene, then they realized, okay, organs can't just wander around within the body. But this diagnosis, it continued for centuries because it started as what they thought was a physical condition of the wandering womb, the moving uterus, but then it became a psychiatric diagnosis. And it remained on the books as a diagnosis until the 1980s. So it really is astonishing to look over the centuries at how this diagnosis was used for women to justify a whole host of things. Basically, in a sense, it was if a woman was just, like I said, out of sorts, if she was too emotional, if she was too tired, if she complained of pain that could not be figured out through medical testing, whatever that looked like at the time, then it must just be psychosomatic, it must be in her head, and she must simply be hysterical.
And that's so touching because I know one of the tenets of your book is about the silencing of women's voices and medical misdiagnoses. And every single person listening to this show has had that happen. And every single woman listening to this show has had someone dismiss something that they are complaining about. We all know that feeling. Why did you, so Lulu is emerging from this. Did she speak to you? Did you start writing first? Did you hear her first? I mean, she's a suburban housewife in a beautiful setting, incredibly cinematic. Talk a little bit about the evolution of this story then.
Yeah, I think to talk about the evolution, I have to talk about my second book, The Girls We Sent Away, which is set in 1965 in Charlotte, North Carolina, in suburbia again. And as I was still finishing up that book, the mother character, that book has to do with a teen who becomes pregnant and is sent away to a maternity home in the era of the baby scoop era, which is when maternity homes could coerce women into surrendering their parental rights. So the mother character in that book, she was still kind of haunting me in a way. And as I just thought a little bit more about her, and there's also a Jell-O salad that's referenced in The Girls We Sent Away. So those two things kind of came together as Lulu started, I wouldn't say speaking, it wasn't a hearing, it truly was a seeing, as if I was almost like watching videos of her life. And so I knew that just because of the the history of things like the diagnosis of hysteria, along with the treatments of the first mild tranquilizer, Milltown, came on the market in the early 50s. And then there was also electroshock therapy that was going on as a treatment, and lobotomy as well. And so I knew, because of the timing of all of that, this one needed to be set a decade earlier in the 1950s instead of the 1960s. But that second book of mine was kind of that bridge in to that, same post-war suburban American world. And then the more I thought of it, and the more Jell-O salad started to speak to me, and S&H green stamps and all of those kinds of things, like Lulu just became very three-dimensional to me.
I mean, it's such a, I mean, you brought up the Dick Van Dyke Show and Laura Petrie, who was all of our idol at the time. But, there's also Ozzie and Harriet and, the shows like that, Father Knows Best, that showed us what it was like in that era. And it is so relatable and so visual with, the martinis, and, as you say, the Jell-O salads, and the making the perfect dinner, and the S&H green stamps. I mean, you tell me in the comments, you all, if you remember green stamps. I totally do. And you use those. I mean, I don't know how to say this, Meagan. It's not like set decoration. You are in her head. The way you've even structured how Lulu's mind works, that she designates how many stamp books something would cost, is so tense and so taut. And at every moment, I was just expecting something terrible to happen at every moment to her. How did you make her be so fragile, I guess she is, or so whatever word you would describe?
Right. So Lulu is somewhat of an outsider within suburbia. Her backstory was very clear to me from the start, that she was sort of that fish out of water, because her childhood was spent on a farm, which she absolutely loved, and that was where she wanted to remain. But because of circumstances, she left that farm and she ended up in suburbia. And so it was very clear to me that all of this stuff that we now look at as typical 1950s, was very strange to her. The Jell-O salads, because how artificial they are compared to the organic, though they didn't call it that at the time, but still the organic way that she grew up on the farm. And then those stamps were a way for her to really, be able to provide something for the family outside of like an allowance or something like that her husband would give her. But it was also something for her to focus on, something for her to count, almost like in an obsessive compulsive kind of way. But all of those things, I think, perhaps they feel in tension within the text, because to Lulu, they are creating a tension too, because it's that tension between the life that she thought she would live, the place she thought she would be, and then the reality of where she is, and the pressure to fit into that place as well.
Because of all those things you listed, but also what she thinks it's supposed to be. And that somehow she has gotten this wrong. Why doesn't she follow the schedule? Why doesn't she do what the magazine says to do? Why doesn't she do what the other neighbors do? What happens when a woman does not want to go by the book at the time? And you explore that so gorgeously. Can you talk a little bit more about being erased and not being listened to, and being so silenced by expectations and society?
Yeah. So within the book, there are 4 women characters. Of course, Lulu is the main character, but then we also have 2 neighbors, Nora and Hattie, who are part of her world when the story starts. And then we have Bitsy, who moves in across the street. And really, all of them are explorations of that, trying to fit into the mold of that suburban life. And they're doing it to varying degrees, and also their complacency is a little bit different as well as to how they feel about that. But I really just wanted to take a look at that, maybe because I grew up in an agricultural setting where my closest neighbor was my grandma a half mile down the road. And now I live in a suburban world. And the first suburbs that I moved into, it was a sort of shock to my system to be living so close to all of these strangers who were suddenly very much into your life. And so perhaps I was channeling a little bit of my own story in that too, of Lulu trying to acclimate to this new environment. And so yeah, but like I said, to a varying degree, all of those female characters are doing that same thing. It's just that they have different past and backgrounds and desire to really fit into that mold.
and different secrets. And that's the other thing that's so powerful in this book, is that you play on readers' expectations of what someone's secret is going to be. And then you just rip the rug out from under all of us. Did you know what everyone's secret would be when you started, or
I would say it was pretty early in the process. It was, of course, as you know, every story takes some development, and it never comes fully formed at the instant you want it to. But pretty early on, I did know, especially with Lulu and Bitsy, and even Nora, what's going on behind those closed curtains. I did know that as well. Yes.
The thing is that the book is so multi-layered. There's the story we think we're reading, there's another kind of a story, and there's another kind of a story. And your imagery is always so gorgeous, even to the point of, as you were saying, Lulu is the queen of the Jell-O molds and the outrageous, towering gelatin things. And as the book progresses, the molds start falling apart. As she starts falling apart, the molds start falling apart. That's, I think, when I started crying. I have to say, did that all? I mean, I don't mean to push you as a writer, but did that all come naturally? Not whatever naturally is, as you wrote. Did it surprise you? Did it move you?
Yeah, I err toward literary, and theme and symbolism are sometimes the first things. I have to force plot into my stories, and I am not much of an outliner, and it's because of plot that I'm not. And I have to work through layers and layers and layers to get to that point, because to me, all I want to do is explore this character and theme and symbolism through that character. And so that was actually the natural part of the story to me. And it was the story structure and the plot and the moving it forward that was where I had to do more work.
That's so interesting, because it worked so gorgeously. If you just joined us, you lucky people, we are talking about The Mad Wife with the New York Times bestselling author 5 times in a row, Meagan Church, and we are giving away, well, we're not, Meagan is giving away, because I'm keeping this one, a copy of The Mad Wife to one lucky commenter. So just leave a question or a comment in the chat, and we will spin the wheel of fun at the end of the show. Again, one more question about writing this is that I honestly don't know how you could do this, how you could sit and be sort of an author and type something that's this powerful. A weird question, when you were writing it, did you feel how great it was?
Okay, so can we talk about imposter syndrome and author insecurity here? Because no, at no point did I ever think that it would make the New York Times list, let alone 5 in a row. I mean, I knew that I had written a story that meant a lot to me, that I could be proud of, but I never knew if it would have a reader beyond my mother. I mean, to be honest. And even with my editor, when I turned in, we worked through 3 rounds of developmental edits together, and it was in the second round that she sent me a 12-page outline of suggested changes, which, as you know, is very uncommon, but the story wasn't fully working for her. And so her suggestion ultimately was to change the secondary character to make them the villain of the story, and then to completely throw out the final third of the book and rewrite it. And now again, this was her suggestion. She was not demanding this. This was just her suggestion for a fix. And I looked at that and I said, that's not the story. It is not the soul. That is not Lulu. But how can I fix this? She is seeing something is wrong with this. I need to figure out how to fix it. So that's when I played around with a bit of the formatting. There is a 1-sentence chapter in the book now that did not exist in earlier drafts, because the final third of the book has a different sort of tempo and pacing to it. And that really started to come alive after that feedback from my editor. And I also changed some of the characters' actions in the final third. I ended the story in a different setting than it had been, which really felt like it was where the story had been headed all along. And so even though her suggestion was not right for Lulu, it forced me to revise and think more deeply and really just make this story even more impactful. But because of that, because of just so many things along the way, No, I had no idea. Like I had no idea that it would connect with readers in the
Yeah.
way that it has. I got a message just before I hopped on with you that a woman was reading it. She's nearly done with it. And she just had to take a moment to say how much she loves and appreciates it because it has made her feel seen. But at the same time, she had a panic attack just today. And she realized, as she started processing and examining herself and trying to figure out where this came from, she realized it was actually because she also felt like she was living in the headspace of Lulu because she was becoming so immersed in her story.
Yeah.
And I mean, to get feedback like that is just absolutely incredible. So no, I had no clue that this book would receive the
I'm not
reception.
surprised. I'm not surprised because the book is so enveloping and so immersive, and you really feel that you know Lulu, and you wish you could help her and guide her, because she is, she is such a fish out of water in this world that you've created. I mean, the world is so cinematic and so visual. Do you see this neighborhood and you see Bitsy in the house and the family talk?
100%. Yes. Yes. I see all of it. I see the world, the neighborhood, the people, the farm, the tree on the farm, the tree in the neighborhood, the cats. I mean, yes, they are all a movie within me that I very vividly continue to see.
And the dialogue is so seamlessly natural, how people talk to each other, even with that veneer of sometimes often people are saying what they're supposed to say, or that taut exterior of behaving one way and thinking somewhere else. Is that fun to write? How did that talk a little bit about the dialogue and how people talked at the time, and whether you had to be careful to not be anachronistic even?
Yeah, well, thank you for saying that because dialogue is where I think I struggle because I could write prose and exposition all day long, but the dialogue I really have to work out. I have to work at it because I want it to feel natural and authentic to the era. And this is another way YouTube has come in handy that I can watch videos or I go back to the Dick Van Dyke Show or I Love Lucy or shows, from the era to kind of understand what, people sounded like and stuff like that. I don't know if you do this too, but I read my work out loud repeatedly so that I can hear what it sounds like, especially that dialogue, to try to sense if it feels natural or not.
And that reading out loud is so astonishing. I mean, it's annoying to do, but it's really helpful. You can find unintentional rhyme or clunky
Yep.
sentences or repetition or all those kinds of things. It's really valuable. I have two more questions, and then we'll take questions from the audience. This has gone by way, way, way too fast. So get your questions in that chat, and we'll put them up for Meagan, and you can be entered to win a copy of The Mad Wife. You alluded a bit ago to the reaction from the readers, and that's what I wanted to talk to a little bit about too. What if readers, besides this woman who told you that she felt like she was Lulu, how have readers reacted to this? What do they say to you about this?
How relatable it is and how they appreciate having a story that shows that motherhood isn't always the beautiful ideal that it's made out to be. And that's not to say the motherhood is bad. It's not. It's just it's complex. And there are highs, but there are lows. And so often we focus on those highs when there are also lows. And we can feel alone when we think we're the only ones experiencing that. In the book, there's a line, something to the effect of that dreams and nightmares are two sides of the same coin. And it's that same way with the motherhood experience. And that really is what I've been hearing the most from readers, even though this is a story set in the 1950s, that readers are saying, I feel seen as a mother because of Lulu. And I mean, more so than the bestseller list and stuff like that, just hearing that means so much that people feel that they are being seen through this book.
I mean, it's so much a book about motherhood and so much a book about personhood and so much a person about being a woman at a certain time. And some of that is absolutely timeless. And that's one of the things that I think that makes this book work so well. I forget if I've remembered to say how suspenseful this book is. There were times when I was just clutching my throat, unable to breathe, thinking she could go either way with this, and I don't know what's going to happen. And I was turning the pages as fast as I possibly could. The suspense of this, how top of mind was it to you to make it be a page turner like it as it is, or did you think about that at all?
So I did think about it in terms of, and this, this is my Drexel adjunct coming out of me right now, in terms of who the modern reader is. So the bell jar is inspiration for this. And at the time, my middle child was 15 and wanting to read the bell jar. And she read it, but she didn't connect with it in the way I thought she might. And it was because she didn't find it to be as compelling, as much of a page turner as she wanted it to be. So I'm like, okay, we're talking a reader in 2025. How can I take a similar sort of concept, similar themes, but adjust it to what the modern reader, what can get them to turn the page and compel them forward through the story while staying very similar to what Sylvia Plath explored for herself. And so I knew that suspense would need to be part of it. My marketing team, as they said, they wanted to really kind of market it as a thriller. And I was like, oh, I don't know, because, I don't want thriller readers to come expecting a certain level of suspense that's not there, because this is still historical fiction. It's very character driven. It's more of a slow burn suspense overall. But the suspense was important because, again, for the modern reader, I wanted it to be compelling. And one way I did that was I feel like I channeled my father-in-law, who used to be a magician. And as he would talk about sleight of hand, he would say, basically, you have to have a distraction. So you're making somebody look over here and they're not seeing what is happening over here. And that's how you trick them. And so that's what I was also doing with the suspense, was making sure I was incorporating that sleight of hand to draw the reader's attention one place while they're not seeing what's happening over here.
You're making me smile now, because you really did that. You really got me in The Mad Wife. My last question, and then we'll go for questions from the audience. And I want to remind you all that your heart will be in your throat in this book. You will just not know what's going to happen. I urge you not to turn the pages as fast as you can, but just to soak in this wonderful novel, even though you'll be terrified. When you pitched this I'm trying to imagine you pitching this to your editor. Mm-hmm. What did she say? And what did you say? How did you describe this?
Yeah, so this pitch was, it was my option in a sense, actually. So I had a 2-book deal with my first 2 books. And after that contract was complete, they had the option for the first right of refusal. And I submitted 2 different ideas, and they kindly passed on both of those. My editor just did not feel that those ideas were fully formed enough. And at the time that she was making that decision to pass, that is when I came across The History of Hysteria. And I spent a couple of months developing the idea. So we submitted a basic pitch package. That was the first 3 chapters and a synopsis, which is the closest I've ever come to outlining. And then just, like a paragraph pitch to go along with it. And she loved the idea. She especially liked that edge of suspense that was in this story. And so then, I just had the task of actually writing it, right? No big problem there. So.
All right, no big problem. And it wasn't the edge of suspense, it was the precipice of suspense. I mean, this is crime time. We call this show Crime Time. It's about crime fiction. And I was thinking this morning about, how does The Mad Wife fit into the crime fiction genre? And I thought, it's the biggest crime there ever was is in this book. Don't you agree?
I agree. Yeah, I personally agree. I saw somebody in the comments mention the book, The Woman They Couldn't Silence, which is by Kate Moore.
Yeah.
Amazing nonfiction, very similar themes, but a real life experience in the late 1800s. And that was absolutely a crime, what happened to that woman and so many others.
Yes, that's an amazing book. I forgot about that book. Yeah, she's quite astonishing. Kate is amazing. And that book is tectonically life-changing. Just like this, you will never look at the world the same way. You'll never look at your mother's world the same way. I promise you, it is absolutely astonishing. Margaret's in the back room with all of your questions. Margaret, what's our first question for Meagan? What did you learn? Anissa, that's great. Anissa, what did you learn from writing your first 2 books that helped you in writing book 3?
Story structure. That's what I learned in writing my first two books, because again, like I get so into a character that's all I care about. I don't care if plot is happening or anything like that. And so it was really working through coming to understand story structure and coming to not fear plot and realize that plot is there for a very essential reason. And so learning how to actually incorporate that into the character itself. And so that the writing of this book was very fast. The idea came in September of 23. The first draft landed on my editor's desk in September of 24, and it hit shelves in September of 25. Now, with my first two books, those took over 5 years from concept until finished draft. And so this one came together so much faster, but it was because I had a much better understanding of story structure.
And what do you mean by that?
Yeah, pacing of the book, right? Like we have the story, the normal world is set up, and then there's an inciting incident, and then we're leading toward the midpoint, and then we have the climax, and then we have the resolution. Just all of that pacing to really help pull the reader through the story.
Yeah, and it works. I can just say that it worked. Who has another question, Margaret? Is there a feminist bent to the story? Highlighting hysteria often strikes me as a woman's empowerment story.
Well, I would say that it's a story about women and a feminist bent to the story. So, I mean, feminism is really about giving voice, co-equal voice to everybody within society, and, pulling those who are on the margins up along with us as well. And so I guess in that regard, it does have a feminist bent, because it is really examining what women have experienced and questioning if this is really what we want present day to look like, or if we want to learn from our history and decide to do better.
I mean, we as women, at the point where we are now, wherever that is, need to be reminded that it was way worse than this for so many women for so long. And so I agree with you. It's less about empowerment, which seems like something that was taken, that we have to earn, than something that we have. That just needs to be acknowledged. And so many people, so many women have been ignored and silenced over the years. And you capture that so personally with Lulu and the rest of her world in The Mad Wife, when people are, even many of the characters are doing the best they can for who they are at the time, and they don't know how devastating and tragic their decisions are.
Right.
Great question. Really great question. Who else has a question? Did you go places, says Emily, did you go places to do some research?
I did not go anywhere specifically to research this. And so this book does not have a specific state and city where it is set, because it is just to represent suburban America, just like what the Wonder Years did, how there was never a defined location for that show. And so really, so much of the research I did for this one, I mean, of course, there were books. Eleanor Cleghorn has one called Unwell Women that is just extraordinary. But a lot of research really came from YouTube in odd ways this time around. But what I also mean by that is because I could actually find videos from the 50s and 60s to drop me into that era and to really be able to see things that way.
Next time, call me. I lived then. Child of the 60s and 50s. I know this stuff. Co-equal voice for all, says Lori. Such a concept. Absolutely so. And somebody has to watch the Dick Van Dyke Show for research, right?
That's right. I grew up on that. So that's already lodged in my brain. Yes.
My real name is Harriet. So I was always the Ozzie and Harriet. That's terrible.
Yes.
Let's go on. Who else has a question? Margaret's looking for the question. Andrew says, do you still own some Jell-O molds? Did you try out your gelatin desserts?
There is only one gelatin dessert that I tried, and it is the one that is a failure within the book, because I needed to know if it failed in the way that I wrote it. So basically, Lulu has to throw together a dinner party, and she has a failure with her dessert because she's trying to get it to set up quickly. And so I did test run that. You can find the reel of me doing this and tasting it, which was awful. But that was the only one that I tried. I do not want vegetables in my Jell-Os, so I am not going to make most of those. But I do not own a single Jell-O mold, but my kids, for every holiday, they like the rainbow Jell-O. So we have a trifle dish where we take, like I think it's 6 different colors of Jello that we put in this trifle dish. So it's this beautiful rainbow dessert that half of it gets tossed, the next week. But
you'll have to teach me how to make that. I always thought that every layer would ruin the one below.
It's patience and it's time. You do one at a time. So you get the one to set, you put the next one on top, let that set, the next one on top. So you really have to plan ahead to give yourself time to do that one.
I'm really tempted to go into this more deeply, but I'm not going to do it. Where else at Crime Time, you all, with Meagan Church and Hank, do you get to know about how to make Jello mold, rainbow molds? This is once in a lifetime. Margaret, we'll take one last question before we draw for the winner. There's a million questions, I know. Renee says, guess what I'm eating? I've been traveling all day. Almonds, maybe. I think Renee is in North Carolina on, I don't know, maybe following book tour. What do you eat on book tour, Meagan? What's your secret weapon for travel?
Yeah, well, actually, you just said it. Almonds, granola bars, trail mix, something that I can just throw in the car and have handy and within reach. And my husband and I have this weird travel thing that combos. We like to eat. The only time we ever eat combos is when we're on the road traveling. And so to me, sitting in the car and having a little pepperoni pretzel combo, I don't know, it works.
I'm picturing that. Laura says Jello, vegetables and Jello is a crime. So true. I just see the carrot. No. Does your husband go on book tour with you?
He does some. I was in Atlanta last Friday. He came with me then. And so he does come with me some.
What does he say about your wild success?
Oh, he is thrilled and excited. We have been married. We started dating when I was in high school. So we have been together a long time, and we've been married over 25 years now. And so, in many ways we have grown up together. And so for him to see, my work and my effort over decades to get to this point, he is just more proud than I can express.
I saw a question that I would love to see him look at you. That I'm sure that would be quite amazing. And one last question, and that is from Betty Fellows, I think, and she wants to know whether this was always the title.
No. So the working title was The Hysterical Housewife. So when I was out on tour for The Girls We Sent Away, I was talking about the hysterical housewife, and the room would always react to that title. Now with Source Books, they run their covers and titles through data testing to make sure that it's going to, appeal to the target reader. And I went to them and I'm like, you can test what you want, but hysterical housewife is it. And they came back and they said, it's not testing well. It's not right. And we worked through multiple rounds of testing. And finally, one day, I was just getting tired of this conversation and they were not going to go for the hysterical housewife. And I said, what about the mad wife? And they said, we like it. Let's test it. And here we go. And now being out on tour and having to talk about the book, I'm thankful that it's not the hysterical housewife, because that takes more effort to say than the mad wife does.
It's also more, you have to think about it one more second.
Yes. And they were really hoping that this would reach a broader audience than what my first two have. And so if we were sticking more in the traditional historical realm, hysterical housewife would work. But the mad wife does speak to a broader audience. So
it's way contemporary. It's perfect. Yes. And congratulations. Everything about the cover is perfect. The title is perfect. The book is perfect. And congratulations to you for just such a perfect job. And I know it has been a journey. And this is just a marvelous result. Thank you so much.
Thank you
for being here today. Let's spin the wheel of fun and see which lucky person gets to get their very own copy of this book. And the winner is Randy Gravitz. Oh, that's fine. That's just perfect. Randy is with Barnes & Noble, and I know that he would.
Nice.
Why are we spinning it again? We'll give away 2 copies. And the second winner also is Melanie Borelli. So Melanie and Randy, you both win a copy of this book, and we will make sure that you get it. The rest of you, if you do not have this book, run, click in about 30 seconds and get your copy, and then let us know how you feel about that. Let me tell you quickly the schedule. Next week, we are off 2 weeks for Thanksgiving. It's hard to make all the Jello molds for Thanksgiving, so we'll need 2 weeks. We'll be back on December 2nd with Nicholas Meyer, who has taken over the Arthur Conan Doyle throne and is writing the Sherlock Holmes books. He wrote The 7% Solution. You remember that book and that fantastic movie, one of my favorites of all times. He'll be here to talk about Sherlock Holmes and The Real Thing, which is, as you can see, is about art forgery. Very timely. Okay, well, this has been a marvelous day and a marvelous time. Meagan is amazing. She has another event coming up in a couple of hours, so you're a stalwart. Meagan, thank you for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here today. I really enjoyed speaking with you. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. I had fun too, and it's been so terrific to see all of you, so many of you here today. Thank you very much for coming. Remember, we'll be off for 2 weeks. I'll see you right back here at 4 p.m. ET on December the 2nd. And until then, remember, it is always safe inside a book.